Is a wealthy life ultimately the goal for everybody?
I think you can make a wealthy life be whatever you want.
Should we always be optimizing for happiness?
I think
Vicki Wusche is a wealth strategist, property investor, and host of a Wealthy Life podcast. Named one of the most influential people in property by The Telegraph, she retired at just 48 and now helps others create financial freedom. Through her books, talks, and mentoring, Vicki empowers people to shift their mindset, build lasting wealth, and live life on their terms.
when I wrote one of my books, The Wealthy Retirement Plan, I said what we need to start with is the 4 M's. The 4 M's are: what memories do you want to make? What mission are you on? Who do you want to spend time with up in your family? And who do you want to spend time with down in your family and to the side of your family? But if you're going to do a book, do it well. This is your credibility.
I have lots of respect for people who walked the path at the bottom of the barrel and being like, you know what? I'm gonna do this myself.
Would I feel happy if I was just lying in the garden all day or just planting my tomatoes all day?
We are better off growing tomatoes.
What would you do if you never had to work another day in your life just to pay the bills?
What I would probably go and do is... Vicki, tell me about a wealthy life. What is it?
Well, I think a wealthy life is not the sum of your bank account. It's the sum of everything else in your life. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Because there are lots of people, and we can think about them, that are, let's call them rich. They have money in the bank, but do they have joy? Do they have fun in their life? And at the end, I think for me, it's about that moment where hopefully you get a nice end. You lie on your deathbed and you're going, have I lived a good life? Have I been kind to everyone I know? Have I seen the countries I want to see? Have I eaten the food I want to eat? Have I made a difference in my community, my environment? Have I left a legacy that is beyond just giving money? Although, if you give money as well, that's great. But have I improved the world a little bit by being on the planet? And have I had fun while I've been on the planet? And if you can answer that, then that's great. Now, I've got some clients that I've spoken to and worked with over the years, and the amount of money they need to make that happen is very tiny. And that's where you start to break through that illusion. You can't be happy until you have millions. I remember being in one of those personal development events early on, and they turned around and said, who wants to be a millionaire? Well, you put your hands up. Who wants to be a billionaire? And I thought, no, I don't know that I do. So I didn't. And then they went, oh, well, you're never going to be a success if you don't want to be a billionaire. You gotta
Nice
want
vibe.
to be a billionaire to blah blah. And I just thought, oh, get stuffed. That it. And that's the polite edit. That doesn't resonate for me. However, I think if I won $1 billion, I would probably look at all the ways that I could, I don't know, change the planet. I'd set up climate change projects and build new hospitals and new schools, or probably buy the country and just sort it out really and become prime minister or something. I don't know. But a wealthy life is, are you happy to wake up every day? Do you love what you do? And don't think that because you've got a job, you haven't got a wealthy life. There are people out there that love their jobs. There are people that don't love their jobs, and that's the difference. But, if you love your job, if you love what you're doing, if you love your family, you've got a wealthy life.
Okay, I love this. I'm going to take a tangent already after the first answer, Vicki, but I want to go there a bit. Is that the goal? And if I can elaborate a bit on the question, because obviously thinking of my personal case, I'm like, should we always be optimizing for happiness? Isn't it interesting sometimes to optimize for fulfillment, which is not exactly the same, I'd say, achieving big things, which sometimes comes at the expense of like a more balanced life with joy. I mean, I'm not feeling some joy all the time when I'm achieving big goals, but like whilst in the process of it, I'm like, oh, okay, I see that here. I'm like, nothing left in the tank at the end of the day, and that helps me get to where I want to go for now. I believe in seasons. Otherwise, this question starts to drag a bit. But you see what I mean? Like, is a wealthy life ultimately the goal for everybody?
I think you can make a wealthy life be whatever you want. If what you're doing at the moment is setting big goals and achieving them and enjoying your life along the way, then you've got a wealthy life. The thing is, it's about how you feel about what you're doing rather than what you're earning, rather than the not being driven by the money.
Yeah.
Because I think that a lot of people's stress and mental health issues, I'm not saying that there aren't other forms of stress and mental health, but a lot of stress and mental health could be wiped out completely if we had better financial education. And if when kids were in school, we said to them, what do you want to be? How do you want to live your life? When I wrote one of my books, The Wealthy Retirement Plan, I said what we need to start with is the 4 M's. The 4 M's are, what memories do you want to make, which is where it was coming out from before. What mission are you on, which might be the answer to your question. And I talked about being multi-generational. Who do you want to spend time with up in your family, and who do you want to spend time with down in your family and to the side of your family? And not necessarily family. Maybe you've got a passion or a mission to share podcasting with kids or podcasting with grannies, whatever floats your boat. You can share your knowledge. You can do all of that stuff. And then means, how are you going to make the money to enable you to have the life that creates the memories, that allows you to be with the people that you want to be with and fulfill your mission in life? Now that changes throughout your life. There's you can see only slight difference in age between the two of us.
Slight
difference. So, if you're young and you don't have kids, then what you're aiming for is going to be different than someone who is maybe in the middle of their life and got kids, and they've also got to think about making money, and heaven help them if those kids then want to go off to university. Or if you're out the other side, and surprise, surprise, I'm about to get my 3rd grandchild soon. Then
happy days.
Thank you. I know. And that's why you never kill your own children, apart from the fact it's illegal. It's because the gift of grandchildren is just the best thing. All the joy, none of the responsibility. Can't wait. But, so I don't have to think when I want a holiday, oh, I've got to buy 4 seats on the plane. There's 2 of us, 2 seats on the plane. I don't have to think about buying it through the school holidays. I can go whenever I like, and then it's cheaper. So there's so many things that I can think that are different to a family parent, to you if you're not in a family situation yet, and therefore your goals in life and what you want to achieve and what constitutes a wealthy life to you. There's no restriction to this.
Yeah. So first of all, your life sounds like a wealthy life, Vicky. So congratulations. It's absolutely fantastic. And I think I see what you mean. So a wealthy life will have a different, definition is the same, but like tactical implementation, I'm going to take some business terms here, can vary depending on who you're speaking with. I like this.
I still have goals.
Right.
And I am still competitive. I'm still focused. When I think about my values are that I am focused on wealth and success, because wealth and success come together for me. And maybe this goes back to your question. Would I feel happy if I was just lying in the garden all day, or just planting my tomatoes all day, or even on holiday all day? If I did a 365-day holiday, would I be as happy? And I'm not sure that I would, because I like the mental stimulation. I like the feeling that I'm helping other people, that I'm making a difference to my tenants, different to my clients and their tenants. I'm like, sending the ripples out, that when I've understood something, sort of like as a background avatar of a teacher, that if I feel like I've learned and understood something, I want to share it. And if I've stumbled across something, I'm not sure if I've completely understood it, then I want to debate it with you to go, well, what's your experience of this? What's mine? Now, if I took all of that out and just went on a holiday and laid on various beaches, that wouldn't do it for me. I'd have to be learning about the country. I'd probably want to get involved in local projects.
Love that.
We go quite a bit to South Africa. I've got a dear friend that I've known since she was just 18 and a student traveling, and we support her charity out there. And so when we went out there, like the last trip out there, we went to see her work. We went to see how she's a pediatric palliative care expert, the only paid pediatric palliative care doctor in South Africa. Just the only paid by the government one, which is quite shocking. So she's out there helping improve the quality of life to basically dying children and their families. I want to understand that. I want to know how she's doing. I want to learn about different people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just hedonistic. A wealthy life isn't just hedonism. There is still focus and success. And, we're on this because it's the podcast gurus. My podcast, I think I've just recorded the 170th episode. I'm just literally working at the moment on the next 20 that I'm like lining up and preparing to go out. So I still have things that I do and I want to achieve, as well as going on holiday and growing tomatoes.
And laying on the beach all day for a few days.
Well, yes, we very rarely lay on the beach all day because we're scuba divers as well. So we often are just...
So cool.
We're a bit more like sea lions. We're in the water and then we come out to toast and then we get back in again.
And little do you know, people listening to us right now, but Vicki does this in 3 degrees waters as well, because she's a cold lake swimmer, which is absolutely badass.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that's nice. I like to think that I'm badass.
Yeah,
cool.
Definitely are. So how do you translate this in the podcast, actually, in a Wealthy Life podcast, Vicki? What's the story behind that?
Okay. So when I was thinking about, I suppose it all really comes from a selfish perspective. It'd be interesting to see if what you do ultimately comes from a selfish perspective, if I understood that. So I started to think about, how did I want to live my life? And I had a job. I was a university lecturer. Then I got made redundant.
Okay.
And I thought, and at the time, my kids were only very young. They were sub 10. And I just went with, darn, someone has taken away my income. And my income supports my kids. That's all we have. And I'm not going to allow that to happen again. And I did go to another job. I then started working in education strategy. And then the project funding ran out. And then the money went again. And I went, that's it. I'm really not doing this again. And so I looked at, well, how can I make money myself? So I had a go at consultancy, because by the time you've done strategy stuff, you think that you can be a consultant. And I did all right for the first year, but I was working with people who had the government pay for me before, and they've never had to pay for me. So now I was saying, well, now you have to pay for me. It was like, well, can't we have you for free? And I did a lot of work for free. I was a director of refugees into jobs and director of something called New Deal for Communities in South Kilburn, which is way back. There was a guy called, I can only think of him as 2 Jags. So Labour Prescott, there you go, Prescott. And he gave out all this millions of pounds in order to regenerate areas of high deprivation. So that's what I did in South Kilburn. And so I'd got all of this experience, and I thought, I can work at this level, but I'm targeting a group of people who do not value my skills. All right, so let me stop flogging that dead horse. Let me stop doing something that is not, I'm passionate about. I've got the passion, I've got the skills, but people don't value me, so I'm not generating the income. How can I take my knowledge and skill and passion and actually do something with it where people will value it? And I went, well, what about housing? And we did our first ever property training course, and wow, the maths and the mission and the skills just came together. And it does help that I love maths and I love the spreadsheet. I love walking around stinky houses going, well, that's okay, we can clean that up. I love the fact that I was in social housing when my marriage broke up. I went into social housing eventually. And that was because someone gave their property to the council that allowed me to live in it, allowed me to create a life with my children, to give them the stability to go to school, to learn, and so on and so on. And I could do that for other people. I could help other families have stability of a decent home so their kids could have the stability of, a safe place to live, a safe place to sleep, and therefore go to school and so on and so forth. So what if I could make all the maths work, make my money work harder by leveraging it with my knowledge and my skills into property, using bank loans? bang, bang, top of my head off. Unfortunately, that started around 2008, proper doing it myself full time, just as though. But you know what?
Perfect
If
timing.
the maths works, it doesn't matter, does it?
100%.
Doesn't matter. You know, I was buying on average 1 to 2 properties a month during 2008 to 10.
What?
For myself, for clients, on average 1 to 2 properties a month. And
Okay.
I think, what have we got left of those? We've still got, I think, 5 of those original ones left.
Not bad.
You know, the others we've churned through as you do with a portfolio. But then as I moved through this, I was going, because people would say to me, I started going to property networking. Oh, it's all right for you. What do you mean it's all right for me? You don't even know me. Don't lay your inability to achieve anything or do anything on me because you've made some assumption about me. It's all right for me. Why was it all right for me? Well, because you had money. No, we started off with 20 grand.
Yeah.
So I had my husband, my now husband, and we remortgaged our house and we released out 40k. My sister and my brother-in-law also had 20k each. So we put 80k together and that started our portfolio. And that ended up getting us, I think, 10 houses in the end we managed to do with that because, again...
That's interesting.
Well, but what I pulled off in 2008, I don't think I could pull off with 80 grand today. I mean, I probably could if I worked really hard, but I don't want to work really hard. But it was lucky, you know, we were buying at properties somewhere between 50 and 70k. And now those same houses are 100 to 150k.
Easily.
Yeah. Well, just like in my area, in exactly the same areas and same streets. I did a couple of very clever buy it and exchange, and between exchange and completion, technically remortgage it.
Okay.
So I had the money to pay the deposit, and in between, technically remortgage it, so that I told the lender I will own this property and I want to remortgage it. And what I'd done was I bought unmortgageable properties because there were a lot of repossessions. And one of the things that people would do is remortgage their houses and then they buy a brand new kitchen or a car or whatever. And you'd go into the house afterwards and there would be no kitchen left because they haven't been able to pay for the kitchen. So the kitchen company have come and repossessed the kitchen. You know, this is different times then. I don't know that they bother doing that now. And they repossessed the kitchen. So now it doesn't have a kitchen. It's not mortgageable, blah, blah, blah. And then I could get the kitchen put in the 28 days I had between exchange and completion and then enact the remortgage. But that was before you had the 6-month rule. Now you've got a 6-month rule where you can't do that unless you've owned a property for 6 months. So
interesting.
So there's little things not even in every 10-year period, but almost like every year, there is a little thing that you can find that might work really well for 3 months, for 6 months, for a year, for 3 years. And then all of a sudden, someone comes in, someone else clocks your area. There's more HMOs. I mean, think of Reading, for example. Reading was fine in the early days, and now there are HMOs.
What is Reading?
Reading is out near Slough, a place. Okay. I keep forgetting you're in France, but Reading is somewhere that UK listeners will know is really quite west of London, and it's the start of. We've got the HS2 called the Elizabeth Line that runs right the way through. So it got very popular, and now the numbers don't work, but the numbers did work.
Interesting.
And so you've got to adapt then. So now it's not buy-to-lets or HMOs there. Maybe you go somewhere else or you do something different there. And it's this constant evolution. So what are the things that other people who are blaming me for their lack of progress, what are they missing? So 1 is the mindset, 2 is the maths, and 3 is the property strategy. And so then Wealthy Life is focused on these 3 topics, the mindset of generally gratitude and wealth, but also understanding that maths is a tool, not something to be feared, that money is maths, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Then actually understanding how to work the deals and the proper money management that you need going on. And then property itself as an investment strategy and why I favor that over the shares or gold or, crypto, that stuff,
So that puts a lot of context around how you came about working on helping other people have a wealthy life, Vicki. Is that what you talk about on the podcast? Like, what's the story behind it? I think there is a background of like public speaker and then talking about things that happen every year. COVID was a little thing as well. Kind of stopping this. Like, can you walk us through how you came about thinking, hey, I should actually, speak about this on the podcast?
Yeah, so I got invited to speak at property events, live events in, BC before COVID. I think probably, again, moment in time, 2008 to 2010, I think if I could have counted 4 women in property that I knew that were publicly in property, that would have been it.
Okay.
And so there weren't many women. It was all male. And I think there was also maybe me, maybe others going, well, hold on a second, I don't see myself represented on the stage. And I suppose speaking to a few people going, well, why don't you invite women up? It's all, God, another male speaker, another male speaker, another male speaker. I want to speak on your stage. But I also had my first book. So I'd written a book. So I think that gave me a little bit of credibility. And again, now, my first book, I think that cost me $6,000 to write and produce. Not I wrote it, but, to use a publisher and everything. Now, Amazon and Lightning Source, it's so easy to get it done. But if you're going to do a book, do it well and have someone edit it for you. This is your credibility. This is what's going to last. Don't ever put a book out there that when other people read it, they go, oh my God, their English is dreadful, or their grammar, or their layout. Or don't annoy
Are they
readers.
French?
Yeah. What's the matter with them? Don't they know English? Exactly. So, if you're going to do a book, write a good book. But I don't think you have to do a book these days. You could probably have a decent social media profile. But in the early days, there weren't people there. So then I got to be one of the few women on the cycle. And that was great, So let's say 2010 to 20, I had 10 years of rolling around the country, rocking up. I don't have a problem talking, you might have noticed.
Seems to walk.
Yeah, and it was just joyful, and it's the way I got to meet people. All the houses I ever went in were empty. My only friend was the viewer or the estate agent. And so the only time I ever got to meet anybody else who was interested in the stuff I was interested in was networking. And what I've learned is that, I had friends that were pre-property and they drift away, because you're just going to have to accept the fact that when you find something, like you love podcasting, if you go out and you talk to your mates about podcasting all the time, they're going to be going, oh, Guillaume, just change the record.
I don't even try anymore, Vicki. I don't even try.
This is it. So you either suppress the thing that you're passionate about and you talk about other things, which is okay. But I found myself going places and talking about things that, and this is going to sound awful of me, but, were a bit boring, frankly. I was excited about my stuff and I want to share my stuff, and nobody wanted to listen to me. And Bob, my poor husband, basically used to just sit here with his earballs bleeding because I'm just yakety at him. So I had to go and find somewhere else to do it. And then, of course, as you mentioned, the big C arrived, COVID, and that was it. Networking was over overnight, gone. And I'd been toying with podcasting up until then. I didn't quite know how. I think some friends and associates who had podcasts that knew me on social media, and I'd been invited, and I'd probably done 5 or 6 podcast interviews. So like this, where you're the host and I was questioned. Yep. And then I started to think, and I've had a go at running my own events as well. And that's just too much like hard work, trying to find venues and do the marketing. And then you've got to manage the day. We had our own local networking event, and it's a hard schlep. And I thought, with this idea of rocking up, you're doing all the work. You're going to do all the editing. I rock up. You ask me a few questions and I yak on, hopefully adding value to your audience for a bit. And then I'm here. I'm home. I haven't had to drive anywhere. The top half looks smart. Actually, today, the bottom half looks smart as well. But, I could be in shorts and then go out in the garden, or I could be in my pajama bottoms and get back on the sofa, anything, And so I started doing this. Well, suddenly in COVID, everybody was doing podcasts, and I knew immediately I had to switch. There's no point me racking on to people about, oh, you need a wealthy mindset, you need to leverage your money, you need to invest in property. Everything was about de-stressing, understanding how money works, understanding the money you've got, being calm. Don't ignore it. Count your money now, and you know that you're okay, and you know that furlough's going to kick. You know that everything's going to be fine. Reassuring people. I did 80 podcasts during 2020 and another 50 in 2021.
Okay.
All as guests, all over the world, from the States. I think the only place I haven't guested is Australia and South America, but the rest of it I've done. In fact, that's a lie. I have been on an Australian one. So
Please don't lie to us, Vicky.
No. South America then. South America's my only one. So I've done Asia and everything else. So I thought, well, hold on a second. Maybe this is something, because I now quite like the idea of not trekking around the world talking. Well, I mean, if you're going to invite me to come to France on a paid trip, then I'll be there. But, all of this, I was driving a lot. I was away 1 to 2 nights a week between networking locally and speaking at gigs all week, all year. And just, I like being at home. So I started doing my own podcast. And A Wealthy Life was born, I think, possibly April, May-ish, 22. I think it was 22.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I just haven't stopped talking since, as you've noticed.
And so has that replaced your networking the way you wanted it to be replaced once it was gone because of the big C? I'm going to call it like this moving forward. Like, did that play that role?
Yeah, it has really. And I think that if anything, I've gone a bit too far and I'm a bit lazy now about it. I don't go out and meet new people. I don't go out. Yeah, I have a few things that I go to. So like this week, which is early May, I'm going along to the Property Educators Summit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of the judges as part of the Property Investor Awards. So I go to those meetings. Cyril Thomas, who runs those, drags me out to those. So, I have to go out and meet other people, new people, and have fully dressed and fully made up and out the house the whole day, But it's good. It's good. I enjoy those. I haven't, because a lot of the networking shut down, I prefer an independent network. I haven't found an independent network that is close enough that I could be bothered to go to. I mean, maybe there is one.
Not gonna name any. We're not gonna name any.
I know.
You want to name some, Vicky?
No, it's not that. It's just, where is one near to me? I suppose I haven't really looked. Maybe, I don't think there's not one in the village. There's not Slough, Windsor. I don't really know of one there. Because I moved to where I live just as COVID started, we didn't really do that exploring. So over that side is the rest of Surrey, I suppose, that I don't really know. I think there is a Surrey meet, which a good friend Lisa Oliver runs, and I don't really know where that is. But if it's more than half an hour away, I'm going like, oh God, so I'm going to have to drive an hour to get there, and then I'm going to have to spend 2-3 hours there. But more, when you finish at 10 o'clock at night, then I've got to drive an hour home, that's 11 o'clock, and then I'm buzzing.
Yeah.
And then I can't get to bed till 1-2 o'clock in the morning because I'm like overexcited. So I haven't, and I know I should network more. I'm a podcast producer. I'm less of a podcast listener. I tend to listen to podcasts when I drive north to view properties.
Here we go.
And then I'll bash them out. It's a 3-4 hour journey. Then I'll bash podcasts out on the journey up and the journey back. But yeah.
Yeah, we are better off growing tomatoes, aren't we?
Well, because they feed you. Yes, they feed you.
As well, right? So it's like win-win.
Win-win. Exactly, win-win. And I have got a large greenhouse that I need to supply. I might even send you some pictures of my tomatoes. So that
Please do so. Please. And if we can put a picture link in the description of this episode because people want to see, that'd be lovely.
Yeah, if you want to have a look at my tomatoes, and I'll send it over to you.
I'm being dead serious, Vicky. I want a picture of those tomatoes now. This is happening.
Okay.
Just so you know.
Okay, definitely.
And I did check, and you in these starters actually very religiously. First episode on the 1st of April 2022.
There you go.
The trailer, but that is the timing is indeed correct.
Yep.
So it did play that role of networking, which was the purpose. After all, you did guest a lot on other podcasts, and then you were like, hey, why not start my own podcast? How did that, if at all, help your business, Vicky? Because let's put context. Your business is you help people get a wealthy life, whether that's through property development or personal money as well? Can you walk us through a bit everything?
I think probably just to clarify that the pieces of the business that I've got is I either mentor people, which is usually getting them ready to invest in property, or that they've got existing portfolios and it's how to take that portfolio up a level or that grow that business. But then I also have a large proportion of clients that are busy at work. They either run their own businesses or they're reasonably high up in their own corporate job.
Okay.
And they know that property is a good idea, but they don't have the time or the education to do it themselves. So I bespoke sourcer.
Yeah.
But through the passion that I have, I do also speak to a lot of groups, which isn't really about property, although property does sometimes trickle out of it. Maybe, 1 to 5% trickle into the property side of things. But speak to groups. At the moment, it's been a lot of women's groups around financial education and understanding how money works. And that's a big passion of mine. But there's no real business there, because the thing is that if people are struggling with their money, then they don't normally have the money to then pay for the mentoring to get them out of that. And that's what created the Wealthy Life community, which is something that you can join for free, which is where I put all my resources. So anybody that I speak to that can't afford to or doesn't value if you don't value, you're probably not going to go in the community anyway, but doesn't resonate with me, then they'll go off. But anybody that resonates with me but doesn't have the money to buy into it but wants to get that education, then the whole of the Wealthy Life community is there. And that's easy. That's one of those bit.ly links /join-WLC, and we can put that link in for anybody. So you can just go into the community. All the resources are there. Yes, if you want to buy into the exclusive interviews and spend more time with me, then you can buy into the inner circle. But the outer circle has all the resources, all the manuals, all the workbooks, videos, tons of resources out there to take you both through the financial mindset, the financial education, and the early parts of property investing and why I believe property is a good idea for everybody. So that side of it's there. But I would not have started the podcast with the financial and the time costs if there wasn't a business output. So it's the same in a way as the books. So the books have a cost in terms of time and creating them, and then they have a cost in terms of production. Yes, you tend to sell the books, but the money that you make out of the books, they're not 50 Shades of Property Investment. I have thought of that title, and if somebody else would probably nick it, but it's that.
It's a good one.
You're not really in the 50 Shades realm. You might be in the Rob Moore realm if you're really lucky, but only if you're really Rob Moore. So you're not making millions out of it. Even your books are, and I hate the word funnel, but they're a guide into, this is me. Do you like me? Do you like what I'm talking about? And if you do, then you can start to follow this breadcrumb trail to work more with me. The podcast, in a sense, is the same thing. They both build your credibility. They give people who might want to work with you an opportunity to get to know you. I recognized quite early on that some of my clients are, oh my God, I've just met you today. I absolutely want to work with you. And that is the sentence, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. That matches up, right? So all of a sudden, somebody's shown up networking, you speak, you meet, they hear your podcast, they read your book, and it's an instant connection. They absolutely feel that you're the right person for you. Perfect. You've got a match, off you go and you work together. But sometimes the teacher appears and the student isn't ready. And these were my stalkers. So I would end up meeting people who then owned up to having seen me 4 months. And in one case, a woman, 4 years. She first met me 4 years ago. She came to networking events. We did speak on and off. I knew her name in the end, so I'd always go, oh, hi, and we'd have a little chat.
Classic.
How are you? But she stalked me. No, she didn't stalk me, but, the stalker rather than the immediate customer. She was tracking me or following me or staying connected to me, waiting for her life to get ready to then be ready to then work with me. And that's happened. 4 years is the longest, which is why I always mention her, but over 4 months. Another woman, I think she took 18 months. She took one of my online courses. So I spoke at an event. She bought into the course. It took her 18 months to do it, but she was also fixing her life in the background. And then she came back forward and she went, right, I want to work with you, Vicki.
Do you think you would have achieved the same success if it wasn't for all the networking in person events, Vicki? Would you have found another way? Because at the end of the day, to the point that you made around every year there's going to be something new. Today you cannot invest in Rhind, I think is the name of the city you mentioned.
Reading. Well, you can, but it's just costs a lot. You can't invest there in the same way that you could have invested there 10 years ago.
Exactly.
Because prices have changed. I think that if there wasn't networking events, then I probably would have done a completely different strategy. I think my strategy was lazy property. I had my money. I ploughed it into my properties, which is where I put my theory of property investing into the practice of investing. I learnt where the theory was good. I learnt where the theory was bad. I improved on the theory. I got my own systems. I got the real world experience of it. And obviously, at the pace that I was buying in the early days, I did that hard and fast as well. If there hadn't been property networking, I was also doing things like, I don't know quite how this came about. The business show got in touch. And again, back when I first started doing the business show, probably around 2010 as well, I was invited to the business show and I was a keynote speaker. Little old me was a keynote speaker. Now, the guys are so big that they don't even consider me anymore. But I would pack out the rooms. Okay. I would have people standing 3 deep at the doors because they couldn't get in and all the seats done and people sitting on the floor in front so they could listen. It was cool because it made me realize that I was sharing something that people wanted to learn about. And I keep going back to that teacher thing, that I think the teacher in me, and that might be different, like if you were investing in property and you weren't the teacher personality, you might have been, like if you think of, there's so many tests you can take. You might have been the maths and control guy. You might have been the joint venture guy. You might have been the development guy. Whereas I was always going to be this teacher, and I find it very difficult to suppress the teaching bit.
Yeah.
And I'm always going to want to share because, I don't know, I've got goosebumps at the moment. I am just so fortunate to have the life that I have.
That's so good.
When I think where I've been, technically homeless, fortunately my parents put me up in the back bedroom. But when my marriage broke down, I had nothing but a couple of black bags of clothes to both me and 2 girls, a travel cart and a bag of toys. And that was it. No money, just debt, not as big as everybody else's debt. I only had $2,000 of debt, but $2,000 of debt is huge when you've got no income and you've got 2 babies to feed. And you're in your late 20s with these kids and you're having to go back to mummy and daddy. Please, can I sleep in? And it wasn't that I had to beg. They opened their arms because,
of course.
I've said the joy of grandchildren. They were having a whale of a time with the grandkids around. But I'm a proud woman, or I don't know that I'm proud in the big-headed proud, but do you know what I mean? There must be another word for it where my pride wouldn't let me spend the rest of my life living in my mum and dad's bad bedroom. I wanted to be, I'm a mother and I want to be the mother to my children, not as much as I love there's definitely a lot of that going on, but I don't want to not share my children with my mum. I don't want to go back into that. I've come out and I've become a mother. I've been a woman, then I've been a mother, and these are my children and my responsibility. I don't want to go back to mummy and daddy's house and have my mum become mummy to me and mummy to my children, because that's not her job, it's my job. And that's where the pride is. I made this commitment to birth and breed and birth and bring forth this life, and it's my responsibility. And when I look back at, I had a notepad. There were red phone boxes. I'm so old. There were red phone boxes and no mobile phones. And when you want to make a call, you had to put 10p in a phone box. And if I wanted to do this stuff, and you had to be where you said you were going to be on time because you couldn't text anybody to say you weren't. So you're ruled by these phone boxes. And if I put 10p in the phone box, I wrote it down on that piece of paper when I got home, because I only had 250 quid a month in which to feed us and pay our gas bills. My housing was paid for, my rent was paid for, but 250 quid had to feed us. So I understand what it's like. We only ate the food that was reduced that night in the co-op. At the end of the road was the co-op. If it was reduced, we could eat that food. And if it wasn't reduced, we didn't eat that food. So the staple we went back to was brown rice, a packet of frankfurters, which I don't think you can even call meat. There was probably no pig in there at all. It was just these 4 sausages and a tin of tomato sauce. And I would make this sort of like risotto thing that the kids ate, and I felt like I was giving them meat and veg. When I think of where I am now, I am blessed. I know I've worked for this, but I am blessed beyond belief. I put the effort in. I've created everything I set my mind to. And I can say this, everything I set my mind to, I will achieve. I will achieve it because I wouldn't commit to it if I wasn't going to achieve it. So I have designed this life. I love the life I have. And your question was about networking. If networking hadn't been there, I would have got here, but in a different order. I might not have had as many holidays because in the early days, once we started doing this and I buy a house and the rent's coming in and I've left very little cash in because of the way that I bought it. And no, I wasn't doing all this BRRRR stuff. I just bought well and did well in the early days and even had 85% mortgages on the first few houses before I went to 75. So I did well in those early days. And when I got a bit of money coming in, we had a holiday and we traveled and I took the kids all over the world. They were in the 15s and they'd been to the States and they'd been to Africa and they learnt what it was like to be a Zulu and live in a grass hat and see the plastic rubbish on the trees. And at one point they wanted to be vets and then they didn't. They did other things and they met the friend who took care of the dying children. And we've been to Australia and to the Far East and we've travelled the entire world. And that money I spent on holiday, I could have bought more houses. So, when we go back to your idea of fulfillment and goals and could I have bought more? But it was never about the size of my portfolio. It was about, do I have more than enough money? So there's enough, more than enough, and much more than enough. Enough pays your bills. More than enough gives you the life that you want around other than just paying the bills. And much more than enough is you're absolutely fine. You can do what you want. And I thought of my money in that lump. Have I got enough money to pay the bills? Absolutely. Have I got more than enough that we can have holidays? Yes. Can we have what we want in life? Yes. And that's the number that I work to, not someone else's number. Do you want £1 million? Do you want £1 billion? No, because I just don't want to work that hard. I want to have the holidays. I have so many memories in my head of the amazing things that I've done, the people that I've seen, that some of the memories are having to fall out. And thank God we have photographs so that I can then go, oh yeah, no, I do remember that because I can remember the photograph, because they're just dropping out my ears now. I am so full of memories and joy, and that's what I want. And that's what I want everyone to have. I want you to have it. And however you want to have it, it's your joy. It has to come your way. But if you don't understand how money works, and you don't understand how investment works, and you don't understand the difference between shares and property, and that property is the one thing that will give you a monthly cash flow, a wage. It will give you a wage from the rent. And then if you leverage those experiences, it will give you more money in terms of a business that you can run if you're young enough and you want to do that on the top. Then if you don't learn that, I don't understand how anything else that you do will ultimately allow you to have the time to find the joy.
Amen. First of all, I can't think of a better way to end this episode, Vicki. I'm just going to say I have lots of respect for people who walked the path. It's one thing to say, hey, do something, like invest in yourself, invest in properties, go and get the life that you want. But it's another to have been through, how can I say this in corporate terms? Yeah, at the bottom of the barrel, like literally, like desperate and being like, you know what? I'm going to do this myself. I'm going to get out of this, like with grit, with passion, with anger, with everything. get myself out of this jam and actually build something so that you can relate to other people and be like, I wouldn't ask you to do anything that I haven't done myself. Be it the Frankfurt sausages to the kids or the investing in the properties, taking risk, doing the math and making sure that everything works. So huge respect.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Of course.
And I know we had a pre-conversation, so I know you've given up a proper job to do your stuff. And I can look at you as being a young guy, and I have a lot of respect for you taking that step off. That's the scary bit, stepping off. But you don't have to step off and drop off. You put something there. You mentioned that you and your business partner, that there was demand in your business before you stepped off.
Yes.
You don't go, oh, look, here I am. I've got a wage. I'm just going to fall off the edge of the cliff.
Yeah.
You have something there that you can step onto.
100%.
That's what property investing can give you. It can give you enough, that word again, enough money to cover your bills. And then you can say to yourself, and I would say to you now, right? So you're running your podcast business. I'm going to turn it on you for 1 minute, right? You're running your podcast business and you're doing well. And no doubt you've got automations in there, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know when this moment is, but I'm going to ask you this question. What would you do if you never had to work another day in your life just to pay the bills? Now, you might work in order to pay for holidays or other things that you like, tomato seeds. But what if you never had to work just to pay the bills, that your rent, your mortgage, your utility, basic insurance, basic for all of that stuff is all covered. That enough figure is covered and you don't have to work in order to earn that money. What would you do with your life?
It's a very interesting question. So I have a form of answer, which is I would do something. I can't imagine myself just laying on the beach, or even if it's not laying on the beach, but like traveling all year. It would be fun maybe for 6 months, but then I would need to build something.
Be bored, yeah.
I recently thought about this. I'm like, okay, if I'm at peak, what I would probably go and do is try and solve the nuclear fusion problem.
Okay.
Because I see this as the way to, but again, it's like achieving a big thing. I don't know if there is like a savior syndrome or whatever. I'm just like, I can't see anything more meaningful than solving the energy issue for our planet. Like if we solve this, I do believe that we may achieve peace and may achieve prosperity, which is seriously at risk right now.
Yep.
And France is actually doing huge progress in the fusion industry. So I'm like, maybe I'd do that. Or what would it take? Probably getting a PhD in neurophysical nuclear
Some others,
something complicated like this. I'm like, yeah, if I didn't have to worry about anything anymore ever, I would like to achieve big things, and that's potentially the industry I would pursue.
I would just help you on that journey, because that ties into my saving the planet. And there's nothing wrong with a small savior complex, as long as you don't. The ego doesn't get away from you, and we could name people, but we won't. That you don't necessarily need to be the person to do it. You could be the person that facilitates it. So you maybe don't need to get a PhD, which would delay your journey if you find someone who has the PhD. But something about the way that you think about the problem, the fact that you're even saying, if we solve this, effectively what you're saying is, if we solve the energy crisis, we don't need wars anymore.
That's what I'm thinking. Maybe that's delusional.
Yeah, well, that's great thinking. Now build your tribe around that. And I mean, I did the same thing in the village here, whereas I felt that if I can't solve climate change, right? But maybe what I could do is galvanize people to all do a little bit. And instead of trying to do 100% of something, what if I did 1% of something with 99 other people? So I set up something called Englefield Garden Greenies.
Okay.
And the mission was that by changing the way that we garden, we could lessen our impact on climate change and potentially even reverse, in a tiny, tiny spell, reverse climate change. And what if everybody in the village joined in? We could be a village that was sort of like net zero impact, and actually potentially, because we've then got bee highways and hedgehog highways, and we're not, we have a rainwater tank, so we collect our rainwater, 5,000 gallons, very low at the moment. I would have to say, please, can we have some rain? And the whole thing with the tomatoes, and I've planted 15 trees in the garden, and I grow my food.
Solid.
And all this sort of stuff. And then set it up as a community, and we had a few Zoom meetings about it. And then I wanted to take over verges. This is where you have the road, and then you have grass, and then you have the pavement. And I wanted to plant them with wildflowers. Why can't we plant wildflowers everywhere? Oh my God, the politics. Who could have thought a wildflower who could literally decide to go anywhere it wanted anyway could prove so complicated? But the village is now doing it. We're
Nice.
gradually, and it's actually quite hard work because the soil has to be really bad. So you have to really degrade the soil in order to get the wildflowers in.
On purpose.
Yeah, so it's quite interesting. And in the village here, they're planting trees like nobody's business. When I got spare food, that goes down to either the local community centre and they make food for people, or it goes down to the local church where they have a food waste project, and every Saturday people go and get all the food. That there's just so much waste going on.
Yeah.
To be part of something like that, that's exciting. And if I worked, because Bob and I were talking about this and said, in order to earn 100,000 a year, which isn't a huge amount of money, you'd have to work a proper 9-to-5 job. You'd have to be some form of senior management, which means you wouldn't work 9-to-5. You'd probably work 8-to-6. You wouldn't be able to work from home. You wouldn't be able to work. Your diary would be at somebody else's demand. And then when you weren't working, you'd probably still be thinking about it. You might do something on Saturday mornings, which would knock out one of my swimming sessions, and I wouldn't be able to swim all of the other times that I could because I couldn't do what I want to do. I have to do what the job demands. And I can't think of a single job that would make me happy other than if there was a way that I could run my own business to teach other people about money and financial mindset and how money works, and teach them the stuff that we don't teach the kids in school, how not to get into debt, how not to get sucked into social media and buying. This is the big thing we've got here, very American, and I don't know if you have it in France. We buy crap that we don't need because we've seen an advert or because somebody else has it, so we think we need it, which takes away our money, which we probably bought on a credit card, which we probably don't clear, which means it probably costs us more than we probably bought it when we thought we were getting a bargain. And then we're then going to go and hire somewhere in a yellow box storage or a red box storage or whatever these storage companies are called. We're going to go and buy a space in which to store the crap because we don't really need it, but we bought it all, so we're going to keep it all, which is so American. It's what they do. Some of them even, I was talking to a friend who's just come back over from the States. They have one or two storage centers where and a garage is full. So they have a big house. The house is full. The garage is full. The storage is full. All that crap that you have in your life has cost you money, has probably cost you interest on top of the money.
Yeah.
And you're putting it in a box somewhere distant from your house and you're never seeing it because you have no room for it.
Crazy.
That's the myth that everybody is being dragged into. That's the red pill, blue pill. That's the illusion that you've got to see through, that it's, what do you want your life to be like? Don't compare it to anybody else. I'm not comparing to you because we've got different circumstances. There is no one like me. There is no one like you. There is no one like you that is listening. What life do you want to live? And design it for yourself and work out how much that would cost, and stay off the social media links that sell you rubbish that's been imported from slave labor in some other country. And I'm very aware of the fact that probably 10 minutes ago you said that was the perfect way to end the podcast, and then I threw you a question.
I was just thinking about this as well.
And then I went for another 10 minutes then. So
Vicki, even better.
Cut me off quick.
No, but I love this is gold. And so thanks for the nice words, by the way. I think that wraps it up. I think we have a good idea of what you do, Vicki. However, if people want to find out more about you, check out what you do, potentially join the community, where should they go?
Well, you'll put all the links in the show notes for me. So basically, if you can spell my name, you can find me. So it's Vicki Wusche, and it's Vicki, and my last name is Wusche, Wusche. And I'll tell you the funny story off air about my name and my connections to France afterwards.
Go for it.
You find me, you'll find the website. I'm more personal on Facebook. I'm a bit more, reels on Instagram, although you can see all my swimming and tomato pictures on Instagram. And I'm rubbish on LinkedIn. So if you want to send me a LinkedIn message, you might need to send me a Facebook message to go and watch the LinkedIn message. But yeah, I'm on all the socials. And of course, check out my podcast, which is A Wealthy Life. And that's available on Spotify and iTunes.
And we'll put indeed all the links in the description. Vicki, thank you so much for coming on Podcast Gurus and sharing your wisdom.
Thank you for inviting me, Guillaume. Thank you.